Jeanna and Sarah, welcome to CI to I.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We're going to talk about the relationship between development and marketing. But before we get started, you're both kind of Shakespeare nerds. What's your most controversial Shakespeare opinion?
Ooh.
Well, I think mine is that I'm actually not a Shakespeare nerd. That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
controversial ad. I was a music person, and now I've worked at Shakespeare companies for 17 years. So I think it has gotten in there a little bit. So I don't know. That might be my controversy is that I think you don't have to be a Shakespeare nerd to market Shakespeare effectively and very well.
Love it.
Oh, I don't know if I have a controversial Shakespeare opinion. I mean, I've been doing this almost 20 years now with the company. And so I think I am in general less precious about it than I was when I kind of first came out. It's like, no, it must be this and text must be that. And you can never change a single thing, even though this word has fallen into complete obsolescence and means a very different thing now. And so, yeah, I think I just am more relaxed about it than I used to be.
Amazing. Love it. Mine is that it's fine to say Macbeth. Um,
Ah, that is a
Ooh,
so
hot take.
yeah, I'm not that crazy.
but I don't, out of respect for people who do care about that. Let's start by setting the stage. What did the pandemic look like for Cincinnati Shakespeare Company? How did it impact your operations and revenue?
Sure. So I'm sure everybody listening has their version of this story, but this is ours. So here in the state of Ohio, the governor put forward the ban on mass gatherings over 100 on March 12th of 2020. And effectively, that shuttered our doors. Where we were, we had just announced about a week prior a brand new season and sold, what, Gina, $200,000 in advance subscriptions to it,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yes.
We had ordered
And
all of the posters. They
say
had
we
all of the dates on them.
yeah, we pre-printed all the materials. It was the first time I'd ever done that just to
Yep.
save costs.
Like every show was cast, like we were ahead of the game. We were so excited, so ready. We were 2 weeks into a 5 week run of Kate Hamill's adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which at the time was set to break all of our single ticket records. Every data point that we had said that this was going to be the best-selling show in the company's history. And we were 4 days into rehearsing a much anticipated production of Hamlet when it all came down. And in the end, we ended up staying closed for 579 days. The theater was dark. And we had to make some hard decisions really, really fast. So on March 12th, we probably had 60 or 70 odd people on the payroll. That was 2 dozen full-time staff, plus part-timers, plus actors, designers, front of house, bartenders, everybody that it takes to make a theater run. All of those contractors, were let go on day one, and 2 weeks later, 10 full-time staff followed. So we went from about 70 people to 12, and just kind of buckled down and tried to make it through the next 600 days.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
the thing to add too is Sarah, you had taken on the role of director of development.
About 12 weeks before that.
Yeah, right before that.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember around that time. Also, it wasn't like we were all preparing for 600 days of closure either,
No,
right? It was like,
no.
what will the next week? What will the next 2 weeks? And that's what made it a lot of the decisions so difficult as well.
Well, exactly. We kept doing season re-announcements because we thought, well, people
Hmm.
open in 3 months, so we'll do that announcement. It's like now it's 6 months, and yeah, there was no way to know. But had they said, okay, you're going to be closed for 2 years, we would have done things totally differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the unknown that was one of the hardest parts about it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had also just passed like a board approved budget and business plan a couple of months prior. And so we were moving forward with that and the announcement of the new season. And we ended up having to redo that twice over in four different versions. We essentially took that business plan and made a plan A, B, C, and D for the entire business based on when we could reopen the theater, which was the biggest unknown.
And were there any key turning points as you began to reopen? Like, when did you feel, was there like a break point of like, now we're open, or was it a gradual
It was
reopening?
gradual in the sense that we knew we needed to start rehiring people, getting things back in op, basically like we turned the cog off and we needed to start the gears again. So that was a little bit gradual, but we were talking about this. It's like besides all of the logistical things, because if you remember, we had to check vaccination records and status and masking. Besides all of those operational nightmares and challenges, we just had to figure out who are we welcoming back, because I think we can all look at ourselves and say there's probably things that are different about us now post-pandemic, just as people and the types of things that we do for fun or the types of things that we do outside of our homes. And So the audience was just going to be very different and look very different. And so that was the big thing to say, who are we welcoming? What do they need now? And that was a whole different group of people. Even if it was the same bodies coming in, the things that they needed had changed. So relearning that, listening to that new audience. And I would say some of that work definitely still continues to this day as we're learning the habits and things that people expect about their experience out is different now, fundamentally different.
And the numbers from your last 3 seasons are really impressive, especially compared to what many other organizations have experienced. What do you think made that rebound possible?
So I think we had as good a footing going into a great global crisis as we probably could have had. We're not a particularly old organization, and we're not a particularly large one. So just for context, we're in our 31st season. There's a lot of organizations in the city who are 50 or, upwards of 100 years old, arts organizations. And we're just kind of under a $4 million budget here in Cincinnati, Ohio. So kind of right middle of the line. We didn't have like the big multi-tens of million dollars endowment invested that a lot of kind of older and more storied organizations could lean on. Like that's the whole point of that, is to be able to lean on it in crisis. But what we had done is in the lead up to being able to execute the capital campaign and the building of our new building, which happened about 3 years prior to 2020, is we had done a lot of advanced work to make sure that our financial controls were really, really strong, that sort of the understanding and ownership of the business, not just at the top and at the board level, but throughout the leadership and the staff was really strong. And we'd strategically built up some cash reserves and some facility funds. So we were in a good enough position. And that combined with making hard decisions really fast, like having to let go of a lot of people, essentially kind of insulated us up until we were able to really maximize those relief opportunities that started to come once we were 3, 6 months, a year into this.
And then we really capitalized on the time that we had. Without doing shows, we were in these kind of Zoom rooms and thought, well, if we had all this time, what is something that we could work on together? And that was really where kind of what we call like our staff innovation took place, when we really started to rebuild the development side of our ticketing database and really integrate those teams, because our team went down to 1 in marketing, 2 in development. So the 3 of us joined forces and thought, well, let's just lean into this. What do you need? What do I need? What can we do together? How can we capitalize on this time? And we set off on taking time. In this case, the big one was our database, our Spectrix database, really getting development up to snuff with that, with our marketing, was a huge investment of time, and we had the time to do it. So we try to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most striking, exciting parts of your story, right? Is the way that marketing and development are working together. And like that's not always the norm. Like when did you like realize that like you started to work on this database? Was there just kind of like an aha moment of like, hang on, we should all be working together a lot closer, like going forward, not just for this database?
Well, yeah, I think we realized, looking specifically when you're stripping it all away and you don't have shows, it's the same people. The same people came to shows. The same people were donating, and trying to think about folks as patrons or donors, it just didn't make any sense. If you think about it, we had ticket buyers that had now become donors because they said, please take our tickets back or we're not going to come. And I don't necessarily think patrons were thinking, oh, great, I'm taking my ticket buyer hat off and putting on my donor. That's not how people feel about their experience. So why were we operating as if those were very separate groups of people, or those groups had different needs? They really didn't. They were really combined.
Yeah, I mean, organization-wide, the pandemic really forced us to sort of rethink what it was to deliver on our mission. And nowhere in our mission statement does it say we do plays, right? It says we bring Shakespeare and the classics to life for all. And so everybody went through this period of going, how do we do that? How do we continue to communicate the value proposition of this organization, whether the way you're used to interacting with it is by buying a ticket or making a donation or some combination of those two things, and continue to kind of help those people understand what we were bringing to the community in a new way and how they might choose to engage with that.
What is your team really good at, and how does those strengths complement the other team?
So we're actually going to brag on each other a little bit.
Excellent.
Do you want to go first? So something that I think marketing professionals are amazing at is really understanding like voice of the customer, right? Understanding that while we are a charitable organization, while we have a mission and we do mission-driven work, we're also a business, and we need to not make a lot of assumptions about what our folks need and want. We need to actually ask them and put the work into listening there. I think marketing teams are really great at infrastructure, working within systems and creating kind of operating systems and standard procedures that just help us only have to make a hard decision once, and then we sort of know how things can operate. Jeanna in particular, and marketing folks, I hope in general, are also data geeks, right? They understand the power of making a data-informed decision, and the strength of sort of sharing that with more than just their department, and how that can really sort of empower all of us. And then just branding, right? Creating a cohesive identity so that no matter what sort of external communication you're doing, everybody is speaking with the same voice.
And what I've learned from development professionals, and Sara in particular, is the value of small moves. So often, I'll hear these stories about someone that they've stewarded for years that hasn't donated for, and I'm, again, in marketing, I'd be like, great, we need to move on. We have a show that's closing, so that value of those small moves, the long game, in really thinking, well, how can I bring that same kind of strategy to marketing that works in development? And storytelling, marketing, we often get very short amount of characters to tell a story. Development sometimes gets a little bit longer in those grants, or those long conversations is essentially building a story with a donor. How is development taking the time to build that story and really bring people into it to find their own place inside that story? And development has a curiosity. They always want to learn a little more about, wait, what are they doing down in the scene shop? Because that might be something that I could find sponsorship for, or funder might be interested in that. Or actually, now that I'm down here, I see that you have a need, like maybe I could find some money for that. So kind of sort of slowing down sometimes in marketing, putting that development mindset on, can really help us see ways that we weren't thinking about before, just looking at something through a different lens. So I think by finding those, we kind of call them like our superpowers in each other, only benefited both of us to sort of see those things.
Yeah, and it feels like there's a lot of overlap in terms of like listening. It was just like how you listen, right? Like data versus like story, and how they can like really complement each other there.
Exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about the full audience journey from first time attendee to loyal donor, for example, where do each of your departments fit into that? Or are you both integrated at all times?
Yeah, we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
We busted that myth.
Yeah.
So
it's just not as linear as people want to think it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes someone will actually go from like first time attendee, maybe they didn't even buy a ticket, maybe their friend brought them, right? And then they buy a single ticket, and then they subscribe, and then they make a small donation, and then they make a major donation, and then they write us into their will, right? Like that's kind of the standard progression that we learn. And I'm sure there are people that are like that, but in our joint experience, most people come in somewhere else, right? Or they surprise you. They'll start as $100 donor, and then all of a sudden they're a $100,000 donor because they had a moment, they wanted to make an investment. It was right time, right place.
Or they might have become in as a donor because they believed in something we were doing outside of the building, like our education programs or free Shakespeare in the park, and they've never even seen a show here.
Right.
And so the win on them is to get them to come to a show, so to make them a first-time buyer. So I think that myth and that sort of passing through, because if you're structuring your plan that way, that means that one department's not even looking at people until a certain point.
Right.
Development shouldn't come in and say, okay, I just want to see people that have been here a bunch of times, only subscribers. I mean, that's one group, but you're missing out on everyone. And it's a little intimidating, but it could be anyone in the world, right? Anybody could enter that path at any point. But keeping in mind that it's not linear, I think it's sort of freeing, because there's all kinds of different strategies that you can do, and you don't have to focus on the first one. You can focus on all of them in different ways.
Yeah. And now I think the important caveat there is what that doesn't mean that we like all communications go to all people, because all people can enter at any time, right? Mm-hmm. No, it's the opposite. Because I think we acknowledge that people can enter into that continuum at any point. Jeanna and I are jointly really strategic about who we're talking to, about what, when. So we absolutely segment and target communications within the base. We just don't kind of fall in a silo of like, you're on this side of this linear spectrum and I'm on this side of it.
That's right. Yeah, I'm sure we've all had the experience when we get an email from an organization that just does not appeal or does not apply to you. Have you ever gotten one about a canceled show and you're like, well, I haven't been there in 5 years, they just blasted the whole list, right? Or
Yeah.
about a fundraising campaign, and again, I haven't been engaged in a while. So being really targeted and exactly who we're reaching, the things that we can know about people, and we can know a lot about them. We can know their attendance habits, their donation habits, if they're even opening or closing our emails, we can see those things. So that's all important data points that we can build messages for people on that whole path.
Yeah, it's something we talk about all the time, of things being anticipated and relevant with marketing and development, I assume, as well. Like, I'm delighted when I get an email about that I want, and I want to understand, or even like a text. We were talking about that the other day at Capacity Interactive, like text, like SMS marketing. There's nothing worse than getting one that you don't want, but there's nothing but, like, it's so delightful when you get one that you do want,
Yeah, exactly. I don't necessarily look, we actually started recently including our buyers on some of our marketing emails. There's a way to do some variable content in them that we use in Dot Digital and in Spectrix, because our original thought was like, well, once somebody's bought a ticket, let's not spam them. Let's not send them emails because they already have their ticket. But we were hearing from them that saying, well, I have the ticket. I actually would have been interested in that email you sent where we got to meet the cast, or that email where you showed the first photos from the rehearsal. Now, again, we have the targeted information, because I don't want to send them one that says buy tickets here, because they already have tickets. But there's a way to set that up, and either in that email, or you can go super easy and just make a separate email that's slightly different. So anyway, I'm just trying to say you don't need high tech tools to always accomplish some of these things.
And you've alluded to using Spectrix. Are there any other specific tools, routines, or practices that have helped you stay in communication with each other and how you communicate with patrons?
Yeah. So, look, I know nobody wants another meeting on their schedule, but there are two that we have put in place that we think are actually incredibly valuable and productive to being able to get these two departments synced up. One of them is we start the week like 11 a.m. on Monday, and Jeanna and I both meet with our producing artistic director, who is, the executive director of the organization. And I think it's incredibly valuable. I mean, between Jeanna and I, we essentially manage all of the company's revenue. So Jeanna manages all of the earned side, I manage all of the contributed side. And as opposed to us having one-on-ones with Brian, our artistic director, and then having to kind of play telephone and translate, and nobody really knows what everybody else is doing, we just do it together. And it's a way of both allowing us to be aware of and just kind of develop some sort of basic empathy and understanding for what this other part of the business is going through at a particular moment, but also to be able to offer a really valuable outside perspective and go, well, I understand that maybe this is the best practice over here, but have you thought about this? Because this is maybe how I would approach that particular thing. And I think we have found that to be really, really practical and valuable.
Yeah, because even if there's something that maybe seemingly seems like it doesn't touch marketing at all, maybe they're having a conversation with a donor, there might be something that I know from my history with something they saw on stage that I can add to that conversation, or at least know what's going on and know that they're having that challenge or they're working on that particular thing. So that's been enormously helpful. And we kind of replaced two separate 1-hour meetings with one 90 to 2-hour meeting, but it's so much more effective. We get so much covered in that time. So highly recommend rethinking the way you might do those one-on-one check-ins. And then the other thing we've set up is a DevComs meeting. So we kind of made up this department called Development Communication DevComs, and it's all the members of the development team and all the members of the marketing team. A weekly meeting. We close the door. It's just us. We get to really look at everything we're doing, look through every line and project that we have coming up. And don't tell any of my other meetings this, but this is my favorite meeting because I think we get the most accomplished. And yeah, it's a full ranging conversation because communications could apply to anything happening at the company. And so we get a lot accomplished. It's a really working meeting, but it keeps everybody aligned. And that's usually an hour of our week that really does set us up for the next week. Because I am definitely one of those people that's like, not another meeting, please. Can't this be an email? But those are two that have been very successful for us.
Gotcha. Is it your both your teams in DevCon?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's the marketing team, the development team all together.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Which for us in a mid-sized organization is 4 people total, right? We recognize that if you're in a bigger shop, maybe it's not the entirety of the teams, but then again, maybe it is. Maybe there's a touch point every month or so where you actually get all the humans working on this in a room together.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we actually had added, we do a weekly staff meeting. At one time, it had just been a leadership team meeting that was just sort of heads of departments. But this year, we made a change and basically invited the whole company to the meeting. And not everyone can make it every time, but it's actually been a great adjustment. It was Sarah's idea. So, well, why, you know, because we could go two ways with it. You could say, well, let's limit it and make a smaller group that can really be effective on these things. Or let's open it up. Everyone can come. Our artistic director usually asks some sort of a question, more like a thought starter that just sort of, you know, we can kind of share something, we go around, and then that's a great space to say, well, everyone's in the room, what could we actually accomplish? And, you know, those meetings are never more than a half hour, 45 minutes, and we get a lot done when we get to connect that way.
Yeah, it feels very deep. It feels like a culture, right? You're changing like a mind. It's a change in mindset towards collaboration from the entire organization. How did you build that buy-in with like leadership, with the box office, like all levels of the organization?
I think a lot of it started with, you know, in the years just prior to the launch of our capital campaign, we really had some kind of cleaning house to do in terms of our own operations, right? So, I mean, there was a time 10, 15 years ago when I first got into development, I did it by writing grants. I was a grant writer first, and I used to have to meet monthly with the board treasurer to look at when this $5,000 was expected to come in because it impacted cash flow, right?
Yeah.
That's not us anymore. And how we got from that to where we are now is really spreading ownership and accountability of the business throughout the leadership. So when we get a budget or a business plan rolled out, it's not the first time we've seen it. We built it, right? The leadership's responsibility is to kind of set strategy and vision and kind of the overall slate, and then it goes out to, you know, Jeanna and to me and to our production manager and to the head of our education department and anybody who's kind of owning that portion, be it, you know, revenue or expense or a combination of the two. And the subject matter expertise then builds that from the ground up. We say, this is what we think we can raise, this is what we think we can sell, this is what we think we can, you know, spend. And then it's a conversation, it's a practice. So that sense of sort of transparency and accountability is built into the ethos of the company. And then I think we've just managed to take it sort of a step further with our specific teams.
Yeah, and I think really what makes that work is the transparency piece. And that does start top down. So we're very open about if we're having a financial challenge. I mean, especially in the pandemic, it was a lot of like, here's the numbers, here's where we are. We want everyone to see. There is no benefit to sort of hiding that or obscuring that from the team. And it's funny, we have this board in the kitchen where we have like our sales goal and then where we are to meet that goal. And the amount of people that are like blown away that we would publicly put that information out there is surprising to me, because I'm like, well, I want everyone to see where we're at and where we're struggling, because sometimes it's not good news. Sometimes it is a show that's struggling, and you know, we have to manage that to say, well, here's the things that we're doing and here's what's happening. But by being transparent about it, everyone's on the same page, and then we can rely on our team, and they can be accountable to help build those goals, because nothing is sort of obscured from everyone. Everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah, it sounds very refreshing to have that like transparency.
Yeah.
Like when you made that move, it must have felt almost like a relief to have all that transparency.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll never forget at one point I got a budget rollout and I looked at it and I went, I can't apply for this grant that you say is going to bring in $20,000 this year. They're on an every other year cycle, right?
Mm.
And it's just one small example of what happens. And it doesn't mean that leadership is bad or uninformed. It's just they're not the subject matter expert in your part of the business. You are. So part of your job is managing up, down, and sideways. And then all of us put this thing together.
Yeah, I hear from other marketers sometimes that they sort of get the goals. They're like, yeah, we need you to sell this much on this show. And they bring so much anxiety. And I can see that, you know, we would never do that because there's no magical thinking. I understand that you need it to make this much to make your budget, to make your expenses work, but we can't get there. And it does no one any good to hope that we could. So let's look back and build this budget together realistically. Where are some places that we can push and where are some places that we can pull back on expenses? Because that's not to say we don't have stretch goals. We're always trying to reach for more. But by using the data, we can make really good guesses on where we think we're going to be. And we need to do that basically. What can we do? And then look at the expenses. And if it doesn't match up, then we go back to figuring that out. We don't pretend that one of those things is different now. If the new data point is just, I need more money, that's not.
Yeah. This is kind of a more practical question. But you went through a website redesign, right?
Yes, yeah, just recently with Hotfoot.
Great. How was that process in terms of your two departments and what you need from the website? Like we do a lot of like work with website redesigns, and we're constantly trying to get people to, you know, talk, like tell people what you need from the website and also what the website needs to do from a patron slash donor point of view as
Right,
well, rather than our department's point of view. Like, how was
exactly.
that process?
Well, it definitely started with, we know we needed a new website, which has sort of become a thing that you need to be looking at every 3 years, if not more. As I've been with the company for about 16 seasons, this was my fourth website redesign. And every time we do a new one, I loved it. And then towards the end, I hated it every single time. So, like we need to change this. So I've been talking about needing a new one. And Sarah, actually, her team was able to find a funder to support that new work. Because again, that's a sort of a new capital expense. The cost to do websites now has grown so much to get a good one done. And so Sarah was able to reach out to a funder. Did you see an opportunity, or how did that come about?
I mean, we had sort of built it into this was probably going to hit the CapEx line in a budget somewhere in the next 1 to 3 years. And again, development's a long game, right? It was a funder who was actually, I think, the last capital gift in the capital campaign, but they only do gifts every 3 years. And they gave me a call and said, "Hey, it's been 3 years since your last one. What do you got?" And I said, "Well, I have a website," among some other things, but that was definitely a big
Yeah.
part of it.
Right. And so I led the project, but in collaboration with development to say, okay, what tools, I know exactly how I think that the ticket path should go for our patrons.
Mm,
So I'm going to bring some of that knowledge, that frictionless experience, and make my suggestions to development about how could we make your path even better, and making sure those two things were integrated. So they were done at the same time, when we were looking back at basically we sort of built out that site map. That was a great opportunity to go, okay, wait a second, we had this sort of fun structure. So what if we break that down and simplify it this, whatever, we sort of use the same sort of questions and debates that we were having with ourselves in marketing, in development, to say, how could we improve this? And I think it led to even more clarity on how we could kind of think about, our annual events, individual, monthly, however we were thinking about it, that can become reflected on the website. And then I could work with our web developers to make things more clickable and fun, and kind of gamification of some things. And we're still innovating it. We just rolled out an even better way to do our monthly giving on the site. Hotfoot's been a really great partner to work with on these things. And we're able to use some Spectrix tools, some iframe, some API. I want to reiterate to everyone listening here, we did use some of the iframe, some of the out of the box tools. And why I'm saying that, for people that know, you can do a new website very affordably. Once you get into the very complicated API, can be very expensive, but go check out our website and see sort of what we've done with some of those tools. It can be vastly improved even for a lower amount of money.
Yeah. I think that process too was a great example. It really highlights what we were talking about before, which is not everybody chooses to interact with the organization for the first time in the same way. So if you're designing a website and you're going, everybody's first interaction is they're going to buy a single ticket, then that's the lens you're going to design a website on. Whereas if you acknowledge that there are probably a few ways, maybe somebody came to a gala as a guest and now they want to go buy a ticket, right? Or maybe somebody saw that, we take these donor trips and now they want to see what we do on our main stage. So it's making those accessible. And honestly, it was fun. I mean, I remember pulling Jeanna into my office and it was like beautiful mind, right? I'd like post-it noted like the path of here are the pages and here's how they lead and can this link to that. And it was really lovely being able to think about that and to have a thought partner in it to create what we created.
Right, because I could look back and go, okay, what you're saying is this, right? Like the two of us can kind of have that shorthand, having worked together for a long time, or kind of pushing back and questioning, like, well, what if it was this, or what if we tried it this way? I think that kind of comes to my ethos that I shared at boot camp too, is that stop being so precious about sort of your kingdoms and your own things that you're working on, and really let someone else in. Because when they're looking at something, when you're breaking it down, because you think about websites, like, well, we should probably have a corporate foundation page and an individual giving page, and it's like, well, wait a minute, let's break that down. Why would a foundation come to the site, right? Like, what would they be doing on there? Whatever. So it was just a chance to sort of kind of break things down and really stop being precious about how we'd always done it, and sort of think about different ways of doing it.
And it makes for a more coherent website. Sometimes I look at websites and it feels like they're 3 different websites written in completely different ways. It's just
Because
so
they probably were.
because they probably were, exactly. So when you have this collaboration, I think one of the things you said here was you said don't be so precious. I love that message as well, of collaboration, because it requires a dropping of ego and it
Yes.
requires a little bit of vulnerability as well. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I think when you establish that, right, it actually allows you to make braver and riskier decisions because you're able to put a suggestion or an idea into the room without going, oh God, Gina's gonna hate this. It's gonna be, I'm not, you know what, I'm just not gonna say it. Or vice versa. It's like, I don't think that's a good idea. I feel like I need to say something and here's why, right? And being able to create that culture of we're all on the same team, we're all talking to the same people, we're all trying to deliver on the same mission. And if those things are true, and we have sort of a base understanding of empathy and understanding and enjoyment of each other, then great. That's a place from which we can actually push and disagree and have conflict, and it can still be okay and hopefully result in a better product on the other side. Yeah.
I think to have that creativity, you need like a basis of psychological safety in your workplace, right? Because creativity does not happen without, and like ideas aren't shared without a base level of like, I'm safe here. Like if I can
Yeah.
say that I can say a bad idea and it be okay, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that's probably the number one barrier a lot of people maybe listening right now say, like, I don't feel that with my development department or my team. And what we would always suggest to folks is just do something tomorrow. What's the one step you can make? Can you send an email congratulating them on something they did? Can you go to that fundraiser that you're not really involved in, but just to see how it goes? Or can they come to your talk back that you're doing after a show and just show up, take a step forward. Because I truly believe people, especially people in this business, right? We all want to have fun. We all have a sense of humor about it. We all care very much about what we're doing. So how can you kind of tap into that on each other's teams? And what's the first thing you could do to build that bridge?
So we've already kind of alluded to this, but what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in this endeavor?
So I think a lot of challenges that marketing and development teams face, it's really just sort of a misalignment of priorities and timelines, and it gives you this sense that your goals are in conflict with each other, even though that's not actually true, right? So we alluded a little bit earlier to this idea of like marketing is really good at kind of the immediate gain, the thing right in front of them, right? And that makes sense. Their timelines are shorter and tighter than ours. The show is going to open and it's going to close, and you can't market it once it's already closed, right? So we have to have an understanding of that. Yeah. Whereas, as Gina said, development can be a much longer process, and it's a series of moves over weeks or months or years to get to the kind of ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve. And there's a natural tension there, right? And that's just something that I think when you acknowledge it and you have empathy and understanding for how those two things need to sync up together, you can start to be practical about it, right? So that might look like something as simple as making sure that if your two departments are doing basically all of the external communications with your people, you want to make sure that they're synced up, that you're not cannibalizing each other, that you're not overloading your people or going too much time without talking to a certain group. It really is just having the conversation and going, we have the same big goal, but we currently have different short-term ones. So how do these two things link together? And then what is the kind of the tactics and the steps that get us to the ultimate achievement?
Yeah, and once you have gone through one season at least, you start to realize, where are my busiest times? Where's my tension points? So for marketers, or for me in particular, the season announcements always our busiest time, right? Because we're setting up a lot of things for that coming season. So it's good for development to know that, because that wouldn't be a great time to come to us with a new idea they have. They might get stress or that kind of reaction from the team. And they might look and go, well, see, I tried to work with marketing, but they, shut me down. It's like, were we thinking about the timelines and things they were doing? Because people aren't always so good at communicating that. They just feel overwhelmed. And it's just a feeling that you think is going to last forever. Where I always like to say to my team is like, keep hard days in perspective. It's not always this level of pressure all the time, but being able to know when each other's hard days are just makes collaboration more effective. And then you can swing in and say, hey, I have time. This is a lighter time for me. What can I do to help you out? We've been doing that just now. We're sort of both involved in a show we've got on the stage. Sarah's directing it. I'm playing in the orchestra, and we have a big fundraiser we have coming up. So we were just sort of swinging between each other, like, what can I do to cover you here? How could we work this out?
What are some other examples of this in practice?
So one that comes to mind, just thinking about our season announcement, we do an online auction, is one of our kind of 3 major special events in the year. And this is something that I started, it was the first year we were still kind of all remote in the pandemic. So we've only been doing it, I think now we've completed 4 of them. And the first 2 were at different times in the year. I was kind of trying to find the perfect time in the calendar. It's like, oh, when is there not a whole lot going on, or when can I maybe capitalize on like holiday giving? So we tried a few things. And then last year, it was actually Jeanna's suggestion, recognizing what is unique and special about the way we do an auction is we're really good at building these kind of unique packages that combine something donated, like maybe a special experience from a community partner or a neighborhood group, and then pairing it to like a show we're going to do on our main stage that maybe is thematically linked. And so it kind of comes with CSC tickets. It gets them in the door. It gets us more, invested with that person who's not thinking of themselves as a donor yet, and then also kind of works with the community. And Jeanna came forward and was like, why don't we actually do it with the season announcement? Because the problem with doing it later is, one, you're missing out on a third or half the shows you can be able to create packages around. And 2, a whole bunch of people have already bought tickets when we did that first big push. And so it's not as compelling to go, yeah, you get 6 of this and that, blah, 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 blah. And we tried it for the first time last year, and it went well, but I was like, oh, I'm not quite sure if this is it, but I want to give it one more. And then we took the learnings from that and did it again this year, kind of knowing more and the overall balance of things and packages and numbers and operations, and it worked beautifully. It's really a nice, solid event. And then again, going back to those operations and those protocols, this is something that now I can take and pretty much run without too much stress on Jeanna's team, who is in their most intense time of year.
Because I remember when I suggested it, I was like, I'm going to regret suggesting this because this is time to add a thing.
Yeah.
But I really, because again, I see the benefit of this auction happening during this busy time. We're getting so much PR and people are really looking at what we're doing with the season. And I love now that they have 2 call to actions. They can subscribe and or they can participate in the auction, and that's like the first chance you can do to get tickets to the show because single tickets aren't quite on sale yet.
Right.
So leaning into that was like, all right, I'm seeing this. I know had it gone the other way and development had come and had maybe not bought any rapport with us yet and saying we want to do our auction and season announcement, marketing would panic,
forget about it. Yeah,
bad timing, But by kind of coming to the natural conclusion together, it just made the most sense to do it that way. And then we just strategize from there. How can we work ahead? How can we make sure we, as our small team, we see it coming. It wasn't a surprise. We knew we could work up onto it. And we were able to execute it that way. And I think it's the right place for that particular fundraising event.
Yeah, I like that you went back to it after a year as well and kind of took those learnings. Sometimes good ideas like that, especially with collaboration, where there's maybe a little bit of like, friction just because of natural like different silos. Like sometimes it requires, giving it another go and like doubling down on the idea a little bit.
Well, and Sarah was just talking about that, about one thing she's learned from me is just try it.
Yeah.
Sarah's so smart and so like very detailed on the work that she does, but sometimes I'm like, let's just try it. It's not great. And what is that? Good is the enemy of great. It's like, well, great is the enemy of good.
Yeah. You can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Sometimes we just got to put something in place and then we have something to react to. One of the things I tell my team is you can't edit nothing, right? So when I'm thinking about a proposal or a letter or a grant, it's like, just get something out there and then you've got something you can tweak with. And I have to kind of apply that mindset to some of these bigger projects.
Yeah. And the other one too was we have an annual gala, like a lot of people do. It's called the Revel, and usually it's sort of like Revel in Romance or Revel in Erotic or something. It sort of is themed every year. And it actually started looking very traditionally like a fundraising event. It was not even in our building. It was in, a fancy ballroom somewhere. And we were always trying to program it. We'd have to kind of come up with performers or we got kids in there to do stuff, think about, again, any standard fundraising event. And in the pandemic was the first time that, again, that DevComs team, we thought, okay, so we're creating a show for this event. Do you know we have a lot of shows?
Yeah.
We already have a lot of those. why don't we stop making a new show and use the shows that we have? So the first one we did was with our park tour, because it could be outdoors. This is like 2021.
Right.
Things are sort of reopening. We did like a picnic style. The park, our free Shakespeare in the Park Midsummer performed, and people sat at little tables and watched. And then the next year we moved it indoors to the theater along with the show. Sarah, you want to talk about a little bit how that event has transformed now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I love about it, I'm not a big fan of event fundraising in general because it's such a high cost to raise $1 and it can be so burdensome, especially on small teams, takes up a lot of time and capacity for what is often sort of a one-off experience with a person, which is antithetical to how I think about philanthropy and stewardship and all of those things. So if we were going to design an event, I want it to be something that, one, I can actually show off what we're doing. So I have a better chance of retaining and stewarding that sort of first experience into a more long-term investment. And then I also want something that feels like us, that doesn't feel like every other person's fundraising event. And knowing that I can lean on Jeanna and, recognize that we can use the same company that created all of the beautiful brand creative for the shows. They're also going to create it for the event, and it can exist as its own thing and also feel tied to it, and it feels like us. And it's just a really, really nice, I hate this word, but I'm going to say it, synergy of again, everybody's got the same goal, right? It is silly to to sort of let those resources go unused when they're sitting there existing on your team.
I always think with these donors, like they have a million fancy meals.
Yes.
Like they're not here for another fancy meal. They're here because they like Shakespeare.
They like
nobody needs another rubber chicken dinner, right? It's like I want to throw a party people actually want to come to because it feels like us. And it's a tricky audience, a gala audience, because it's often people, I've got people in my gala who've been here for 30 years and people who are walking in my door for the first time. Like that's a tough audience to program for. And so being able to rely on this joint team to kind of help us walk that line, I think has been really, really productive and effective.
Yeah, and we've actually had people tell us, like, you guys do these events really well. Like,
will you come to ours? And we're like, absolutely not.
Like,
that sounds exhausting.
And we certainly have people that are like, this isn't my event. I'm not into this.
That's absolutely true.
And that's okay, because we're very gracious. What do they say? The generous authority of saying this is what our event's going to be like. This is how it's going to go. This is what it's like. Something we do that's a little different is aren't necessarily your tables. So it's kind of a revolving event, and it's a little bit longer because of the show. But it's ours. It's truly a CSC event, and the people that love us and know that really enjoy this one. So even Sarah, who doesn't necessarily love big events, I think this one's found a little way into her heart here a little bit.
It has.
So we have fun with that. Yes.
Why do you think the silos between marketing and development are so common in arts and cultural organizations?
So we just figured this out.
We did.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay.
So, because we were talking about it and Gina's like, well, I mean, sometimes we're like literally physically siloed, right? Like when you just don't interact with people, like you got this wing of the building, especially in like big organizations, big shops. And I said, it's like, yeah, that's true. But then that's kind of also true for any team, right? It's like, that's why there can be tension between like admin and production, or between like the production and the cast, or whatever, just speaking as a theater. I think with marketing and development in particular in the arts, it has to do with this sort of shared business model, right? That we are basically 50-50 earned revenue, so ticket sales, subscriptions, education, concessions, merch, to contributed. So individual giving, sponsorships, grants, government funds, things like that. And there is a natural tension there. It's not like, if I were to go work development at another nonprofit agency, I'm probably 90% of the revenue. If Jeanna were to go and do marketing for P&G, right, like her responsibility is to the shareholders. It's just to sell the product. And here it's both. We have to be the business. We have to earn your dollar. And also we are a mission-driven organization with a 501c3 and a charitable purpose. And so I think in between those two things, that is sort of the underlying tension, that these two departments can feel like they have conflicting goals when actually they've got the same one.
And that is very unique to arts and culture. We were sitting here trying to think, like, what other industry has this problem? And I'm sure somebody can think of more, but I don't think it's very clearly arts and culture is definitely one of them that has this competing imperative. It's sort of ill-advised as a business model, right? Because we'll sort of be selling something and I'm like, well, that'll sell a lot of tickets, or donors aren't that interested in it, or the vice versa, can make things tough. But that kind of feeds into that idea of like, how do you measure success? It can't always just be ticket sales. We sort of think about sort of three lenses. There's sales, there's donations, and then there's mission. And we can say something successful if it was positive on two of those. So maybe some play we did didn't necessarily sell a lot of tickets or had lower sales goals, but it really hit our mission and it really excited funders. That would be a success. Yeah. And maybe we're doing a show, some silly something at Christmas, some fun farce. Is it really pushing our mission along? A little bit. Who doesn't love to laugh? But it's more for ticket sales, right? Yeah. And that's okay. You can have this mix of things. But if you try to do things that hit all three all the time, and you can, but if you try to do that every time, that's just that path to badness lies. So it's just it'd be really tough to do.
Yeah, I love the idea of like remembering the mission as something that ties everything together as well, though. Like I think there's a couple of boot camps ago we were focused mostly on like the why, like remembering why you exist in the pandemic, because we've been in this sort of survival thing for like 2 or 3 years at that point, and I think a lot of organizations were forgetting that, hey, we have a mission, like, and we have a why do we exist. And once we refocus our efforts towards that why, then we actually function a lot better as an organization because we have purpose. We have a drive forwards, and we communicate that a lot better when we sort of double down on that.
And that's actually true in business too, right? That's what Simon Sinek and the power of why and the infinite game. It's like even for-profit companies do better when they're actually trying to kind of reach for that vision. And the purpose isn't to win, it's to perpetuate the game, right? It's to make everybody better.
And some of the hardest part we have is sometimes, so one thing we do that we didn't realize was so unique, but we went to a conference recently and kind of when we did a show of hands, we realized this, was audience survey. So not sending audience surveys, a lot of people do that. But the question at the conference was, how often do you read them? And most people were like, maybe at the end of the year, we'll kind of pull them and look at them, And we said, we print them out, every single one, and we sit down at a meeting at the end of every show with the whole team, development, marketing, production, the artistic team, sometimes actors and directors from the show are in the room, and we read every single comment. And it can be tough because, when it's anonymous comments, sometimes people just say what they're thinking and have different feelings about it. But always from those conversations, we leave with something that helped us understand what people are thinking about our show or our experience or our just general, what's it like to walk in our doors? Those comments range from, I couldn't find parking, to I would have done something different with the vocal projection of this actor, like it can range from all things. So looking at those comments is so valuable and making sure everybody is in them together and reading them all at once. We glean so much from that.
Yeah. And I think it helps create sort of an overall culture of constant self-assessment. If we can be accused of anything as an organization, is that we have to remember to celebrate our wins sometimes. So we've had to kind of build things in to be like, hey, high five, like go team, yay, like yes, we did this, good job. We are very much kind of okay, what's next, and that is good, that's healthy. It keeps us on a high standard of excellence. But it is that sense of, you kind of build up that skin and everybody goes through it. And we're constantly, even when something was a wild success, it's doing that postmortem and going, great, what worked? Tell me what was successful and what we want to repeat again. And then what didn't? Like, what can we make even 10% better the next time we do this?
It's a muscle because it's hard. Those negative comments ring so much more in your head. That's what you walk away from it. But really trying to look at that objectively and also see all the hundreds of really positive ones or things people said, it can be hard. And I can see how if, pitching that and sitting in a room with an artistic leader, how they can get emotional or they're very passionate about the work that they do. I mean, that's that's why they're the leader. But it's just so important. We like to say we do these shows for people, which sounds so obvious, but sometimes we forget that people are coming in and seeing the show. Did they have a good time? It's the question we want to know. And it's fascinating to me the number of people that really can't answer that necessarily for every show they do.
Yeah, so that's such a hard balance to celebrate the win, but also listen as well of lighter things. I remember, I this won't make it into the podcast, but I do a lot of improv, and the first time I was in Edinburgh doing that, like I remember all my reviews, but I think about the worst ones the most, you know,
Yeah, of
like
course you do.
so we got called the antimatter of improv once, and I was like,
Wow.
that took a little bit of celebration,
I
you know,
like that.
to
We've
go out and
occasionally been
like,
accused of marring things with comedy, so I appreciate that. Sent to the antimatter of improv. I like it.
Yeah, people are so mad.
yeah.
Like, I don't want to be laughing at this.
Yeah. Another thing we looked at in the previous boot camp that we did was like hospitality and understanding everyone's journey from like the moment they first interact with your organization to the, you know, the moment they leave and after going forwards. And it seems like you have like a 360 view of the entire organization and that journey. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and that has become more and more important since the pandemic. So as people broke the habit of going out and seeing shows or going out and doing something outside of their home, getting them back into that habit, you have to promise them a good experience, a comfortable experience, an expected experience. They want to know that if they're taking their time and their money, that it will be a good time. And that can be challenging if you're not communicating what people can expect about a show, if you're not learning about blind spots that maybe you don't see about some space in your building, or the seating being uncomfortable, or I couldn't find the bathroom, all of those things. If somebody can't do those things, no matter how amazing your performance is, they will have left feeling like they had a bad experience. And so all of us on marketing and development are responsible for that experience somebody might have. Even again, it's from the second that they might see an ad and decide, oh, I might be interested in that. Let me go to the website. That's when it begins. How easy was it for them to find the ticket? How easy was it for them to know where to go? All those things has become vital now. One thing we found interesting too about the path people are taking, our Friday nights became less attended. That used to be a really popularly attended date. And we looked at it, and it's mostly due to people working from home now more. If they have the flexibility, they choose Friday to work from home. And so if I'm working from home Friday, then I'm not going to leave my house and go downtown to see a show. Thursdays became much more popular. So that was a big shift to say we used to do all kinds of different things on Friday, and we need to move them to Thursday. We can push Fridays a different way. So knowing what people are expecting, or what like the way things have changed for them and their going out habits, we have to be on top of that, or we would never have seen that change.
I think another big thing that contributes to is, and this is true in marketing and development, right? The second engagement is always harder than the first. So the second gift is harder to get than the first gift. Getting somebody to buy a second ticket is harder than getting them to engage the first time. And being able to put that focus and accountability around someone's holistic experience, I think helps reinforce that idea. It can't just be enough that they enjoyed the show, right? It's not enough. It's got to be more than that.
One thing that I got from development, so with that report that says what donors are coming that weekend. So one thing Sara does is she will take note cards and write a little note to some donors, or maybe if she knows something about somebody that's coming back after an illness or something, she'll write in a personal note and give it to the front of house, and they set them on the seats for those people when they come into their seat. So sort of stealing that idea, when someone's a first timer now, they get a special note from us that says, we see that you're a first timer. Thank you so much for trying us out for the first time. There has been a $20 credit applied to your account. You don't need to do anything. You don't need a code. Next time you buy tickets with us, there'll be $20 off. Please come back. And that's been working really well for us, because it's that kind of psychology of, I have now $20 burning a hole in my pocket. I want to use it. But that came from this sort of small moves from development. Because again, it's like, that might have applied to 30 people in a night. It's sort of a lot of effort for a small group of people, but that getting somebody to come back a second time is so important.
It's huge.
It's huge. It's worth that time and effort to do something like that we've taken from, and something we're inspired from development.
I love the way you said about the entire experience as well. We recently talked with head of guest experiences from the Detroit Zoo, and they made the point of like, nobody's going to enjoy the exhibits if they don't know where the bathroom is, like and that kind of stuff. Like what you were saying of like that guest experience, hospitality, and accessibility as well is just incredibly important, I think, in organizations these days.
That's right. And that's something Sara and I are really good at, is really thinking about when someone comes in, do they know where to go? Can they be comfortable here? That's important to me. That's something I always really do when I'm attending things. I think it's fascinating the number of theaters that don't have photos and information on their physical seats available for people if they want to learn about what it is that I'll be sitting in for 3 hours. Fascinating to me. So we have our seat plan on there. We have information on there. Again, it's not for everyone. It's for that small percentage of people that's an important information and important barrier. Where are the wheelchair accessible seats? Is there a ramp? Do I have to do stairs to get to certain places? We try to make all that information available so somebody doesn't come in and have a bad night because they didn't have the information they needed in advance. That's terrible. If somebody's come to the door, I want them to be able to come in and have a nice time.
Yeah. And I think that goes into the people too, the staff, the attitude. Like it's like Jeanna said, I mean, you're giving us two of your most precious resources, your money and your time. And we don't take that for granted. Something you'll hear me say all the time if I'm at a donor event or a sponsor event, or honestly just walking through the lobby of the theater before the show and in conversation with someone is I'm so glad you're here. And I say it a lot, but I mean it every time. Like, I don't take for granted what it took for you to walk through that door tonight, and it matters to me that you're there. And I think that kind of goes throughout the staff. Looking at those comments, we get a lot of really, really positive things about our front of house, and you might just be a volunteer usher. You might be, a contracted bartender, or whatever it is. But that sense of, you matter when you come through the door. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah, and the comments we get that are like, your team made it so easy to exchange tickets. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That I'm like, what are we doing to people at other buildings to let them pick a new
They're so traumatized.
They're so traumatized. Everyone listening, please help get our energy out there. Like, why are we making this hard for folks to just have flexibility, in their schedule? We don't want to be considered like airlines when you buy a ticket and that's it, and you're screwed if you don't want to go or you can't go or something.
Yeah.
But the important piece, that the loop that's closed, is our artistic director sees that.
Yeah.
He knows that's the thing that we're doing, and he can thank the front of house next time he sees them. And it means a lot to those people to continue developing and doing a good job, because they know everyone really does appreciate the work that they're putting forward. But that does start with Sara and I, because my policy is always, if someone has entered this building to see a show, they need to see the show. So if their tickets aren't where they said they'd be, or there's some problem, whatever, let them in, we'll sort it out, like, just to get down the barriers of that, stop making things so complicated. Don't be so precious.
Yeah.
Jeanna, what do you wish more fundraisers understood about marketing strategy?
So I know we had this question and it seems a little bit negative to me. I kind of wanted to flip it a little bit.
Love it.
And talk a little bit about what I now understand about fundraising strategy that I've been able to use in marketing. The biggest piece of that is that it's okay to slow down and do the next right thing if maybe it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get a ticket sale tomorrow. That could be the biggest thing, is how can I take time to actually develop the audience, learn about what it is that they're looking for, listen to them, and get them to be a new ticket buyer, and the value of storytelling the long game. So being able to tell a longer story, get people to join us, why we might be doing a show, help them understand if maybe the show that they're seeing isn't necessarily their favorite thing, but they might understand why we've done it for mission reasons. They might understand why we did it because we got support from the community. All of those things I think I've really learned from fundraising strategy has helped me in marketing.
Awesome. And Sara, on the flip side, what have you learned from marketing?
I think it really is the value of the voice of the customer. I think what, philanthropists are good at is kind of that, that small connection, that conversation, that anecdotal piece of data, and that can be really valuable, but it's not the strongest decision-making tool. I think what marketing really understands is that you can't make the best decisions based on assumptions that aren't based in good data, or at least as good as you can. And so it might be something as simple as, if you're trying to reinvent what a fundraising event looks like, it's like, well, I can kind of go off of my gut or my personal experience, and those things are valuable, but Jeanna can also help me put a survey together, and I can actually ask my people some of these questions. I can actually get better information that's going to help me make better decisions for my department and for the organization at large.
So what's next for Cincinnati Shakespeare Company? Are there new challenges or opportunities that you're preparing for together?
Well, our 5-year strategic plan is now coming to a close. We set it up in 2020. And so we're now relooking at that and basically starting that process over to say, what parts of this plan did we reach? What parts are we still working on? What do we want to put into the new plan? So that work is happening now. And one big piece of that I've started to do is gathering data. So basically thinking about gathering data from external partners. So what does our audience think we should be doing in 5 years? What's something that they've noticed about the programming we offer, the type of experience that we offer? Asking donors the same thing. Basically, we want to put their voice at the table because we can't necessarily bring in all the patrons and donors to sit in these meetings when we're building a strategic plan. So that's the next big project we have kind of on the docket, is like, how can we build that? What is the future looking like now that we are really in, I know I kind of hate that overused phrase, the new normal, but we have settled back into, this is what it looks like. These are the type of things patrons and donors want. How does that inform what we do with our strategic plan?
If another organization is listening and feeling stuck in their silos, where can they start?
Small.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we've referenced it before, but a lot of this work, I think, has to do with letting go of ego, releasing your hold on your petty kingdom, right? Your sort of little corner where you've planted your flag. Allow yourself to be curious, to be vulnerable, and to go first, right? So it's easy to go, oh yeah, that'd be great, but I want the other person to be vulnerable first, to make the offer first. It's like, nah, whoever's listening, it's you. You go first. Take a small step.
You're the one you've been waiting for.
Aww.
Exactly. I think I saw that on a poster or something. I can't take total
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yes, getting curious and stop being precious about things and be authentic about things. I think the first, the way to build rapport with younger associates or new associates that have come in is just sort of ask them, what do you think about this? And that's something so powerful about hearing from maybe your boss, actually being vulnerable and asking them how they feel about something. There's a whole new perspective there that you can have and that you can teach and learn from them.
The culture that we've created, I think, is easy to step into, right? We want people to actually have a good time with the people that they're working with. Not that everybody has to be everybody's best friend. Like, no, it's not that. But, it's harder to be crappy about your coworker when they were at your house for dinner last week. Or when you guys can just go downstairs once a week to the bar and celebrate a small win, or empathize around something that is hard that you're going through. It's like, be humans together. That's how you do any of this.
I mean, it's very obvious. Sarah and I are friends. We've worked together for a very long time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't argue or we don't clash about things. But because we've sort of built this rapport, she knows I only want the best for the department, and she only wants the best for mine. So all the passion that's coming from maybe a potential debate is all driving towards that. So let's hold on that and say, well, how can we make this better? And that can make those harder conversations easier. But if you don't have that rapport with somebody, then the conversation is just an argument and you're not getting anywhere necessarily. But that they care about the thing that you care about too. So that's really where you can start.
Yeah, there's a reason we're all here,
Right, exactly.
If you could broadcast one message to executive directors, leadership teams, staff, and boards of thousands of arts organizations, what would it be?
Yeah, so some of it is kind of what we've referenced before, right? I think this starts at the top, and it starts with executives releasing a little bit of hold and trusting their people, right? If you want to build a culture of trust at your organization where there is trust between teams, that's got to come from you as well, right? And so it's that transparency, that accountability, that vulnerability, that's, the ability to say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, I need help. I think when that goes both and all ways across an organization, that only strengthens all of us, right? That helps everybody kind of be their best selves, do their best work.
And we like to say that we like to be managed up. So when we have my one-on-ones with my reports, they begin that meeting and they bring the things that they want my take on, that they need to update me on. My reports know I don't like to be surprised. So that's a great time to bring me information. Let me know good or bad news. It's only going to help us if we all know what's going on. Manage up, allow yourself to be managed. versus knowing that when you walk in the room, everything you're saying is going to go down on the people that you're saying it to. Try and flip it. What would they start with in a meeting with you if they had the opportunity to do so? And that can be kind of scary, I think, to let go of that a little bit. But I think by allowing that, you're going to just learn more things about your department than you, or about your company in those departments than you could ever have done yourself.
There's a fun adage in development talking about making an ask of a donor, and it's, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. And I think the equivalent here, it really is. It's not always about having the answer or kind of, dictating the plan or whatever. Not that, so much leadership comes from that kind of servant leadership model. It's that ability to really want to understand and trust that there are good ideas all around you. And as long as everybody's on the same boat and is rowing in the same direction, you're going to succeed.
This conversation's been absolutely delightful. So thank you so much, Jeanna and Sara, for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having us. This is really fun. We like talking about what we do.
Yeah. And I love to hear. So after I spoke at boot camp, one of the best parts was hearing from people that had seen the presentation on social media or LinkedIn or email. So I really would encourage folks to reach out to us. I'm sure our information can be available with this podcast, because I'd love to hear what other people sort of think about these things and some of the strategies that they're doing at their own organizations as well.